ولن نساوم على الحق أو الثوابت.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Yumna Nofal, and these are today's top stories. Finance Minister Ali Hassan Khalil insists on the approval of the new wage hike for public employees, denying any hikes would target the low-income families. Interior Minister Nuhal Mashnouk meets with President Michel Aoun at the Babda Palace, discussing the contentious debate of the country's new electoral law. And Prime Minister Saad Hariri receives at the Center House Lebanese Forces leader Samir Jaja, where talks focus on the parliamentary law as well as Lebanon's 2017 budget plan. Finance Minister Ali Hassan Khalil is insisting on the approval of the new wage hike for public employees, denying that any tax hikes would target low-income families. Khalil detailed his fiscal plan to finance the new wage hike in a news conference at the Finance Ministry, blasting reports circulating about new taxes as lies. It's the people's right to worry and fear, he said. They have passed through difficult experiences with previous governments. I salute those who moved to express their concerns. A few thousand Lebanese flocked to Beirut's Riyadh al-Salah Square at noon on Sunday to protest cabinet plans to impose a string of taxes to cover the cost of long-awaited salary increases for both civil servants and public school teachers, estimated at $800 million. Sunday's protests capped 4 days of street demonstrations staged by civil society activists and supporters of various political parties, denouncing the proposed taxes and demanding action against rampant corruption and theft of public money. Interior Minister Nuhal Mashnouk met with President Michel Aoun at the Babda Palace earlier this morning. Mashnouk and Aoun discussed the contentious debate of the country's new electoral law. No elections will be held without reaching a new electoral law, Mashnouk said after meeting with the president. He also signed a new decree inviting voters to prepare for the parliamentary elections slated for June. He sent the decree to Prime Minister Saad Hariri, who is in turn to sign and forward it to Aoun. Mashnouk said last week that if Aoun refused again to ink the decree, then the upcoming steps would be decided accordingly. The decree calls on residents and non-resident members of the electorate to vote. Mashnouk in February signed a similar decree urging voters to participate in parliamentary elections set for May 21st, which Hariri signed as well. Prime Minister Hariri received at the Center House Lebanese Forces leader Samir Jaja, where talks focused on several pivotal issues. The meeting, which lasted 2 hours and included a working dinner, tackled the parliamentary electoral law, Lebanon's 2017 budget plan, the long-stalled salary scale, and the general situation in the country. Hariri's media office released a statement earlier today saying that Jaja was accompanied by Information Minister, and the meeting was held in the presence of Culture Minister Ghattas Khouri and Nader Hariri, Hariri's Chief of Staff. The meeting comes after a long day of public protests witnessed in the capital, Beirut, complaining about the imposition of new taxes in a bid to fund the salary scale. Syrian warplanes hammered opposition-held neighborhoods of Damascus after regime forces pushed back a surprise assault that saw rebels try to fight their way into the city center. Rebels and allied jihadists led by former al-Qaeda affiliate Fatah Sham Front launched an attack early on Sunday on government positions in East Damascus, initially scoring key gains. But forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad drove them back by nightfall and began a fierce bombing campaign on Monday morning. On Sunday, opposition fighters seized several buildings in Jobar before advancing into the neighboring Abbasid Square area, the first time in 2 years that the opposition has advanced so close to the capital center. The clashes left dead at least 26 regime forces, 21 rebels, according to Abdurrahman, the observatory's chief, but he did not have an immediate toll for this morning's airstrikes. Russia's foreign ministry says it has summoned Israel's ambassador over airstrikes close to Moscow's forces near the historic Syrian city of Palmyra. Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov told Interfax news agency that Ambassador Gary Corn was summoned on Friday and asked about the strikes. The ministry expressed concern about the action taking place near Russian military locations. Russia, which is conducting its own bombing campaign in Syria in support of President Assad, said earlier this month that more than 180 of its troops have started demining around Palmyra's ancient monuments. Russia and Israel have set up a hotline aimed at avoiding air clashes over Syria, and Bogdanov said Moscow would like this channel to work more effectively to ensure no misunderstanding on who is doing what. Coming up next, Prime Minister Theresa May says she will kick off Brexit formally on March 29th. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thousands of supporters turned at a rally in Paris held by French socialist candidate Benoît Hamon as the presidential race enters a crucial phase after the official campaign period started when France's Constitutional Council announced a list of 11 contenders who had met conditions to stand. Emmanuel Macron, a former economy minister running as an independent centrist, would lead first-round voting with 26.5%, just ahead of far-right leader Marine Le Pen on 26%, before beating her 64-36 in the runoff, according to an Odoxa poll. Conservative Fillon scored 19% of first-round voting intentions in the poll, confirming the task faced by the one-time frontrunner to revive a campaign sapped by a fraud investigation. France's presidential election moves into high gear tonight when the top 5 contenders face off in a TV debate that could help sway legions of undecided voters 1 month before they go to the polls. Prime Minister Theresa May will visit Wales as part of a plan to engage with all the nations of the United Kingdom before she formally launches Britain's departure from the European Union. May will trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, the formal notification of the United Kingdom's intention to leave the European Union on March 29th, beginning 2 years of formal divorce talks by the end of this month. And her office says she would be visiting Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland to hear people's views. Last year's Brexit referendum exposed splits that could threaten the unity of the UK, with Scotland and Northern Ireland delivering pro-EU majorities, but finding themselves outvoted by the English and the Welsh, who were in favour of leaving the bloc. In a sharp challenge to May, Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon said last week she would be pushing for a fresh independence vote after having been met by a brick wall of intransigence in London when seeking for Scotland to have its own Brexit deal. May rebuffed that, saying now was not the right time. And across the Atlantic, U.S. President Donald Trump is accusing Democrats of making up allegations that Russia interfered in last year's election and says Congress and the FBI should be going after the media leaks instead. His tweets come just hours before a potentially politically damaging hearing in which FBI Director James Comey and National Security Agency Director Michael Rogers plan to testify on allegations of Russian hacking and whether there were any connections between Moscow and Trump's campaign. The Democrats made up and pushed the Russian story as an excuse for running a terrible campaign, big advantage in Electoral College, and lost. Trump tweeted earlier that morning as news coverage on the Russian allegations dominate the morning's cable news. Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, host of the Rachel Maddow Show on MSNBC, comments about President Trump's ties to Russia, which are making headlines worldwide. Take a look.
So many questions. Like, do you have any more of his tax returns that you might release?
That, like, I'm harboring for a secret reveal? No, I just had but somebody, that's part of what's interesting. I mean, was there a huge damning bombshell in these tax returns? No, the bombshell here is that some of his tax returns have been made public for the first time when he's been trying so hard to keep them secret. So I do want to know who sent them. I have no idea. I want to know if there's more where that came from. And I want to know why the president won't release more of them. I mean, he's been sort of bragging today about how, yeah, those weren't embarrassing at all. Look how much money I made. And his kids have been bragging about, you know, how rich he is and how much the show he pays in taxes. Great. If you're psyched about this, give us some more. Because we also want to know if you have big loans to like Russian oligarchs or whatever.
What's the worst thing that could come out of these things?
Well, the reason you want any president's tax returns is because you want to know if he's beholden to anybody, if he's got loans from somebody, or if anybody has sort of inexplicably shoveled him a lot of money without a legit reason why. You want to know if he might be acting as president with divided loyalties. He might be using the resources of the United States to pay off somebody that he owes something to. And we can't, I'm not saying he is doing any of those things, but we can't know unless we can see it. And that's why every other president back to Watergate has released their tax returns. That's why it remains a concern that he hasn't. And that's why what we got last night, I'm psyched to have it. It's sort of the first piece in the jigsaw puzzle, but there needs to be more. There needs to be more. He needs to actually disclose his returns.
Do you think he does have ties with Russia? Do you think he's lying to us and that he...
I don't know. I mean, we don't, none of us know. I mean, it could be, so, I mean, in the campaign, people were like, oh, maybe he's not as rich as he says, or maybe he doesn't pay any taxes, or, you know, maybe he's not as charitable as he says, or maybe he's not really under audit. Like, all of those little things might be true. Okay, that'd be interesting to know. I don't know that that would change the world that much. But what would change the world is if, you know, Russia was interfering in the election, and they weren't doing it on their own, and he was in on it. You know, and if he's got ties to Russia, if he's got ties to China, if he's got ties to foreign banks, if he's got any sort of financial entanglements that might affect his decision making, might change what he does on behalf of the country so as to deal with his personal stuff, we really need to know that. It's a national security concern. And if none of those things are true, if he doesn't have any of those entanglements, then show us the tax return so we can stop freaking out about it. Because otherwise we're going to continue to worry that that might secretly be what's driving him, as long as he doesn't show us what every other president has shown us that would set our minds at ease if it's not true. I don't know why he wouldn't release these tax returns if there really isn't anything embarrassing in them. And the one bit that we got last night showed nothing embarrassing.
Yeah. And how does it feel to you being the person that it was leaked to? I mean, you're the person now. You're winning. You're beating Fox News. You're the #1 show, and so you're the person that people go, yeah, I want to share my information with her now.
I mean, honestly, it just feels like a really big responsibility. Like, got to get it right. Like, you have to not only not get played, make sure this is real information. You know, nobody's sending us a forgery. You know, I want to make sure that we've given the White House, we give them hours to respond to this, and we're treating them fairly on this. You know, I'm not going to only put out information that I find that's terrible for the president. If I can advance this story, I'm going to put it out no matter whether it's good or bad for the president. I want to be trustworthy to my audience. I take it really seriously that somebody trusted me with this information. And we're going to keep plugging away. We're going to get this thing answered. We're going to figure out about his finances, because we have to for the country. And we're going to do it piece by piece by piece.
I can't thank you enough for coming on our show.
Thanks, Jimmy.
It's always the best. Great tomato, everybody.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. Finance Minister Ali Hassan Khalil insists on the approval of the new wage hike for public employees, denying that any hike would target low-income families. Interior Minister Nuhad Mashnouk meets with President Aoun at the Babda Palace, discussing the contentious debate of the country's new electoral law. And Prime Minister Saad Hariri receives at the Center House Lebanese Forces leader Samir Jaja, where talks focus on Lebanon's 2017 budget plan. Those are your Monday headlines live on Future Television. I'm Yumna Naufal signing off. Have a good one.
لم ولن نساوم على الحق أو الثوابت.